May the Lord give you peace. This is the greeting that St. Francis used so many times when preaching to the people, when addressing the people who came to listen to him speak. We find ourselves in this third wave of a lockdown. We could be forgiven for losing count of the waves. We've had so many different restrictions facing us in the churches, so many different guidelines that keep on changing. That message of peace is still as relevant today as it was 800 years ago for St. Francis and the people in the church of his time. I thought it would be worthwhile for us maybe to engage on the topic of the Eucharist, to spend some time in reflecting on what we mean by the Eucharist. What is it actually that we are celebrating? As you know, in the first lockdown, we weren't able to come to church. Even recently in November, we still were not able to come to church again for a number of weeks to celebrate the Eucharist. So it's worthwhile for those of us who are celebrating it daily, for those of you who join us on occasions, either on a Sunday or during the weekdays, for those of you who need to be shielding, who need to stay away from the church for the time being, for the greater good of others, whatever your situation may be, it's worthwhile to remind ourselves, what is this celebration about? The Church teaches us that the Eucharist, the celebration of the Eucharist, is the most important celebration of all. It is the source of our daily life. And we will hear or come across different names given to this celebration, given to the Eucharist. We will hear, as I will mention later on, from the Gospel of John, which talks about the bread of life. We will hear the Mass. We will hear the heavenly liturgy. There's a whole list of names, descriptions, that help us to understand more deeply what the Eucharist is about. So I'll start off with reading a few passages from the Gospel of John, which help us to see the centrality of what we are celebrating, of what is taking place in each church throughout the world. In truth, I tell you, it was not Moses who gave you the bread from heaven. It is my Father who gives you the bread from heaven, the true bread. I am the bread of life. No one who comes to me will ever hunger. No one who believes in me will ever thirst. I am the bread of life. Your fathers ate manna in the desert, and they are dead. But this is the bread which comes down from heaven, so that a person may eat it and not die. I am the living bread which has come down from heaven. Anyone who eats this bread will live forever, and the bread that I shall give is my flesh for the life of the world. And the Lord continues, in all truth I tell you, if you do not eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Anyone who does eat my flesh and drink my blood has eternal life, and I shall raise that person up on the last day. So if you were wondering why this celebration is so crucial, so central for us as Catholics, well, these words from the Gospel according to St. John probably give us a good starting point. This is what Jesus is saying about himself. He is describing himself as food, as something that is essential to our daily life, to our sustenance. And that food is essential not just for eternal life, so that somehow the life that will begin when we end our pilgrimage on earth. No, this eternal life, this gift of eternity, we are already participating in it in this life. The Lord loves us so much, He is allowing us to take part in the life of God. And so Jesus is saying quite clearly, eat this food. Without it, you can have no life. And He's essentially saying, I am this food. You are eating me, you are welcoming me into your hearts, into your physical bodies, into your very being. Every part of you will be permeated by my presence. I want to become essential to you. The Lord already is. Without Him, we wouldn't live, we wouldn't have our being. But He's making it explicit for us. He's making it clear for us to understand. Without food, we cannot last too long. You can only fast for so much, for so long. We need food. And therefore, we need Him. And so He is helping us to understand what is a very difficult and challenging message. Remember, many of the followers of His time found it too difficult to accept. They went away. And the Lord said to them, and He says to us, do you wish to go away also? And hopefully our response will be like those of the faithful disciples of the apostles. Where else can we go, Lord? Your words are life. And so we have the basis for our deep understanding of the Eucharist, of the essential life-giving aspect of the Eucharist, that what we celebrate is the source of our life. And to help us understand it, if we carry on reading the Gospel according to John, we have to read the start of the last meal with His disciples. Another reason why this celebration is so important to us, because this is what the Lord did with His disciples just before His death. One of the last things He did on earth, knowing that His hour was approaching, He called His faithful disciples to Him. And He says, we'll have a supper, we'll have this special meal. And so the 12 are with Him. But to understand the Eucharist, remember what happened at the start of the meal. St. John reminds us and presents this image of the washing of the feet. There you can see Jesus at the start of the meal, putting on an apron, taking a towel, kneeling down, and washes the feet of His disciples. For some, it's too much to accept. Peter has great difficulties with this. And yet Jesus insists, I need to do this for you. One day later, you will understand what I have done for you. And Jesus says this, now that you know this, blessed are you if you behave accordingly. Now He knows there is an exception to this. There is the person of Judas. But when we talk about the Eucharist and what we celebrate so faithfully every day in the church, what we celebrate when we come to Mass on a Sunday, needs to be seen in that context of the washing of the feet of the disciples. Jesus is reminding us that every time we come to Mass, remember what I have done for you. Understand this. I, your Lord and your Master, have knelt down in front of you and washed your feet. What does that mean to me? And there are so many questions that it's worthwhile for us to think about. How do I react to this image of God? So often it is we who want to do things for the Lord, and yet here at the Eucharist, Jesus is showing us He is the Master, and yet He becomes like a servant. If you want to take part in the Eucharist, Remember that you need to behave accordingly. And this is Jesus' plea to his disciples. Now that you understand what I have done, do the same. Learn to be the servant of others. Learn to wash the feet of others. And when you look at the actual physicality of this action, washing the feet of others, it's not a pleasant task. Nobody would choose to do this as a mission, as a way of life. And so Jesus reminds us, learn from me. There will be moments in your life where I will put you in positions which you will not enjoy, which you will not have chosen for yourselves. And yet, if you do what I did, you will have life in you. You will understand the true meaning of the Eucharist. And so often we forget that part. So to understand the Eucharist, to take fruits out of the Eucharist that we celebrate, we need to learn to be servants of one another. We need to reflect on and understand, what does that mean for me to be involved in this ministry of service to others? How do I do it? What is required of me? And remember who gives me the strength to do it. So take this with you for today's reflection. The Eucharist, the most important event of our Christian life that we take part in every time we come to church, requires first of all for us to be servants, not to shy away from doing the dirty work, literally. This is the great invitation for St. Francis of Assisi, to which he responded to, and to which he asked his brothers to respond to. And through the order he's asking all of us to respond to. Wash the feet of others. Learn to be a servant of one another. God bless.